This is the Louis T. Network.
In the lab room.
Welcome, you are in the lab room. I'm your host, Lou. Thank you for joining me. Here to talk about the Cleveland Browns traveling on the road to take on the Minnesota Vikings in their home opener. These are two 0-2 football teams squaring off against each other, looking for their first win of the season. Many of us, including myself, thought the Minnesota Vikings would be able to take care of business at home. But I cautioned everyone that this Cleveland Browns team is dangerous and they're getting Josh Gordon back. I've been singing the praises of Josh Gordon, maybe a little too much. Maybe I'm hyping this guy up a lot, but he backed up everything that I had been saying with his performance. 10 catches, over 140 yards. He got it done in his football game, and he was everywhere. He ran the football, he caught the football, whatever they needed him to do, bubble screens, 9 routes, you name it, he did it in this game. And so he was the X factor in this football game for the Cleveland Browns. You thought that Minnesota would be able to get it done, though, at home. After that heartbreaking loss within the division at Chicago, you're coming home for your first home game of the season. Crowd's going to be hyped and amped, and you're going to feed off that energy. The Browns are minus Brandon Weeden. They've got Brian Hoyer starting. You feel like that should be something you should be able to take advantage of. There's no more Trent Richardson, so their running back situation isn't that stable right now. So you feel like you've got some advantages in your favor, and yet the Vikings come out and they turn the football over. Now, the Browns had 3 turnovers, but the Vikings had 3 turnovers as well, and you can't turn the football over in the National Football League. If you want to win games, the easiest way to win games in this league is to force turnovers and not give them back. Well, in this particular game, the Vikings turned the football over 3 times, and their turnovers were a lot more debilitating than the Cleveland Browns turnovers were, because you look at the Browns turnovers, they were all interceptions, but the Vikings really didn't make them pay for those turnovers. Those turnovers, while they stopped drives and they turned the momentum over to the Vikings turnovers, the one before the half, the fumble that Christian Ponder had, it took points right off the board. At least get a field goal there. That changes everything. At the end of the game, when you're down by 4, if you only need a field goal to win, it's a different ball game. It's a different situation. Everything changes. Your whole outlook on the game changes if you get that field goal before the half. Maybe if you even score a touchdown, who knows what could have happened. But you fumble the football, you don't even get an opportunity to score any points before the half. Christian Ponder puts it on the ground and you fumble. Adrian Peterson puts it on the ground, he fumbles. The Browns get points, and Christian Ponder throws a pick. And so these turnovers were devastating to the Minnesota Vikings cause, and they had opportunities. Much like in week 2 versus the Chicago Bears, they had the lead with under a minute to go in this football game. The Vikings had opportunities to get a stop, and they could not grit their teeth, bite down, bear down, and get a stop. They simply could not stop the Cleveland Browns from putting it in the end zone and winning this football game, just like they could not stop Jay Cutler and the Chicago Bears from putting it in the end zone a week ago to win that football game. And so it's very disappointing if you're a Minnesota Vikings fan, because this is the 2nd consecutive week you've had a game in your grasp and you let it go, you let it slip through your fingers, and now the Vikings are 0-3. This is going to be a huge hole to climb out of to start this season. And the Bears are 3-0. The Packers are 1-2. They're struggling, but they're the Green Bay Packers. You got to know they'll get hot and they'll get it going. So tough environment for them if you're the Minnesota Vikings. And don't look now, the Detroit Lions are 2-1. So you're at the bottom of this division. You're looking up at everyone else, and this is another tough loss at home. And if you're the Vikings, this is a tough pill to swallow, because you have to be able to beat the Cleveland Browns at home. You got to beat the Cleveland Browns at home with Brian Hoyer at quarterback and running back by committee. You got to be able to beat the Cleveland Browns, and you simply could not get the job done. Kudos to the Cleveland Browns. I said that they would stop Adrian Peterson and hold him under 100 yards. They did exactly that. I did not expect Adrian Peterson to have a big day. If nothing else, the Cleveland Browns will attempt to put pressure on your quarterback, and they're going to stop the run. They are going to stop the run. They have among the most talented defensive fronts in the National Football League. You're not going to have success running on the Cleveland Browns. They stop the run. And I think that in this game, they did a lot of good things offensively. Despite throwing 3 interceptions, Brian Hoyer actually did play a really good football game. You can't turn it over 3 times, though. He can't throw 3 interceptions and expect to win. If this was the Cincinnati Bengals or the Green Bay Packers or the Chicago Bears they were playing against, this is a loss because you can't throw 3 interceptions and expect to win. But luckily enough for you, you were playing an 0-2 Minnesota Vikings team. They turned it over 3 times as well. You were able to escape with a win. Jordan Cameron came up huge in this game. He's another one of those guys, much like Josh Gordon, that is a huge impact player. And I tried to warn everyone that Josh Gordon makes a difference. Just imagine taking Larry Fitzgerald, Andre Johnson, or Calvin Johnson off of their football teams for 2 weeks. What would happen to those offenses? And I'm not saying he's like those guys. I'm just saying he is that type of player for this team. And so I don't want to compare him to those greats yet because he's not on their level. He hasn't had the longevity nor the production to back that up, but he is that type of player in this offense. And you saw his worth to this Cleveland Browns football team, and you saw the impact that he can have. He came in, and this team that scored 6 points a week ago scores 31 and wins this football game 31-27. This defense rose up and got some stops when necessary, forced some very crucial turnovers, and they find a way to eke out a win on the road, their first of the season, 31-27. Big win for the Cleveland Browns as they go to 1-2 on the season. Huge, devastating loss for the Minnesota Vikings as they drop to 0-3 on this season. So, if it happens in the NFL, whether big or small, we cover it all here in the Lab Room. Take care. Have a good one. See you next time. Like the content? Want more? Sub up.
In the lab